December of 2024 is here, and there's some really good games that are coming out this month, despite the last 2 months being the biggest months of the year. And before we head into 2025 and the crazy games that are launching next year, specifically starting in February, going all the way into fall with GTA 6 coming out next year, there are still some great games that I want to talk about that you guys need to play before the year wraps up. Before we get into the video, thank you so much for almost 850 subscribers. If you guys are new to the channel and you're interested in gaming news, gaming reviews for RPGs and action adventure type of games, please follow the channel, please subscribe, like the video if you guys like what you see here. Now let's get into the games. So the first game that I want to talk about is called Delta Force, and this game is releasing on the new and old PlayStation and Xbox consoles, as well as the PC, so pretty much everything except for the Switch. Now this game aims to be a tactical FPS, so if you are a fan of more of the arcadey FPSs like Call of Duty, this one might not be something that you're super interested in, but I think every FPS fan can probably find something they like within this game. I think this game, in my opinion, seems to be a mix between Tarkov and something like Battlefield, because they do have those big team battles of 32v32 with land vehicles, air vehicles, sea vehicles, and you're going to be fighting on every type of environment there. But on top of this, they also have their operations modes, and operations is going to be broken up into two separate things. First is going to be an extraction shooter type of mode, with the other one being a PvE raid type of mode. So those who want to play against AI solely and do missions that way, you're going to have that PvE raid mode. For those that want to do kind of a mix between the PvP and the PvE and have that extraction shooter element, you're also going to have that within that mode as well. And on top of both of these, you are also going to have a campaign as well. So all of this included, this game has a lot of content, and you can probably find a lot to love here if you are a fan of FPSs, specifically if you do like those more tactical shooter type of games. Now going into the next game here that releases just a day later on December 5th is Path of Exile 2, which is my by far most anticipated game of this month. But keep in mind, this is an early access, so not all of the content is going to be available here, but I definitely still think it's worth checking out for the following reasons. Now, if you are a fan of the ARPG genre, you know that Path of Exile has always been, and probably will be for the foreseeable future, the best, most complex, but also most in-depth ARPG out there on the market. And Path of Exile 2 aims to be this, but offering a lower barrier of entry for new players to come in and understand its complex mechanics, even changing some mechanics just to make it easier for people not to completely ruin their character by the end of the game. But before we get into that, what is new with Path of Exile 2? So they are going to have 12 classes here with 36 different subclasses, with each class having 3 different ascended classes they can go into. I believe in this early access, you can go into about 24 of the 36 as of now. Not all of them have been showcased, so this is going to be really exciting, and there's a ton of different content and build opportunity here for you. They're still going to have a very extensive skill tree here, the biggest skill tree pretty much in any video game ever, but they're trying to make this a lot easier for players to understand, a lot easier to understand the different links between the skills. All of the skills you're going to be getting should be at least a little bit beneficial for your character, and on top of this, you can respec these at will just by using gold in the game, which you could not do previously. And this is huge, like I mentioned earlier, for not ruining your character once you get to the end of the game. On top of this, they are making the gear that you acquire better and better more frequently for your character to use, both from the ground loot as well as from the different vendors that you find in the game, both buying a specific item and gambling for a random item. On top of all of this, gear is going to work a little bit differently with your skills, because in previous Path of Exile game, you had to put skills on gear, and this required specific different links, especially if you're going to put passives on there to buff up your main skills as well. Now there is a different interface for skills. You're not going to require to have all of those specific links on your gear and to craft them as such. It's going to be a lot easier for players just to use the skills they want to use, put the passives on the skills that they want to use as well, and still be able to acquire gear that they actually can use that will benefit their character. On top of this, they're going to have something called the Atlas system, and this is the main point of endgame mechanics for you as a player, where you can go pick all of these different maps that are linked together, play them, get different loot, put items on the different maps that are going to make them harder but give you better loot, and you can continue this and play almost a limitless number of maps doing that. On top of this, you will have hideouts where you can kind of build your own home base that you can run these maps out of. You can craft in and do pretty much everything you want as your home base. On top of that, there's going to be Uber and Pinnacle bosses where you kill the Uber bosses, unlock the Pinnacle boss, and then kill the biggest boss and the hardest challenge in all of PoE, and you're going to unlock these by progressing through your Atlas system and beating all of these different maps that again are going to have a completely randomized landscape, completely randomized enemies, and randomized effects that you can even customize with little mini events as well within all of these specific maps for different items, different gear, different loot, etc. On top of all of this, you are going to have endgame trials, which are kind of going to be a little bit of like a raid where you can go through, do different puzzles, and fight big bosses within these trials. On top of this, you are also going to have returning League mechanics from Path of Exile 1, going to be also in Path of Exile 2, so there is almost limitless number of content here. It's definitely worth trying out, even if you're not an ARPG fan, because this is the perfect time to get into this game and try to learn what Path of Exile is all about. And if you are an ARPG fan, you're probably already going to be playing this game anyway. It's the biggest game releasing in December, at least in my opinion, by far, from a studio that has really never missed. Now, going into the next game here, we have Marvel Rivals, and this game is going to be releasing on both the new gen consoles of Xbox and PlayStation, as well as the PC. Marvel Rivals is set to be a PvP competitive shooter taking place within the Marvel Universe, utilizing their characters and locations in 6v6 team battles. If you've ever played Overwatch, you're going to feel right at home here with this game, feeling very similar to that one, at least in my opinion. You are going to have 33 characters at launch in this game, everybody from Captain America to Doctor Strange to Hawkeye, Iron Man, Loki, even Wolverine, Star-Lord, Thor, and Venom, and the list goes on here. Go check out all of the different characters, but there are a ton of different characters to play from here. On top of this, there are going to be 9 different maps in the game. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how to say all these maps. I'm gonna do my absolute best, but Hydra Charteris Base, Hell's Heaven, Clintar Symbiotic Surface, Tokyo 2099 Shin Shibuya, Tokyo 2099 Spider Islands, and Tokyo 2099 Warped Ninomaru. On top of this, you're going to have 2 maps in Wakanda, Burning T'Challa, as well as Hall of Djalia, and then 2 in Ysgard, Royal Palace, and Yggdrasil Path. Jesus, balls. With these 9 different maps, you're going to have 4 different game modes, the first being called Conquest, which is pretty much going to be very similar to Call of Duty's Kill Confirmed. The only difference here is every time you kill an enemy and the coin drops that you need to pick up to get points, this coin's actually going to increase in value over the length of the match. On top of this, you have one called Convergence. This is going to be very similar to Payload in Overwatch, where you capture a point, it unlocks the payload, and your attacking team has to push this payload against the defending team all the way until the end. The team that gets it the furthest is going to win. Now, the next game mode is called Convoy. This is going to be very similar to the one I just talked about. However, you don't actually have to capture a point to unlock the payload. It's just get on the payload, start escorting all the way into the end, and that's the game mode. The last game mode here is Domination. This one's very standard. You capture a point, you got to hold the point to get more points, and whoever has the most at the end of the game or reaches that point limit ends up winning the match. So if you are a fan of hero shooters, if you are a fan of Overwatch, especially a fan of Marvel in the Marvel Universe, this one's pretty much a must play. People have played this game in the beta or the alpha or whatever it was, and a lot of people really enjoyed it, said it was a great game. It's coming out just in a few days, so definitely check this one out if you think this one's going to suit what you find enjoyable in a game. Now, moving on to the next game, this one's coming out a couple days later on December 9th, and this is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle that is going to be coming to Xbox, both Series X and S, as well as the PC. First off, if you are an Indiana Jones fan, you should probably just immediately pick up this game because it's going to be taking place between Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade with a brand new story set in 1937, and this is set to be a first-person, single-player only action-adventure type of game, where sinister forces are scouring the globe for the secret to an ancient power connected to something called the Great Circle, and only one person, obviously Indiana Jones, is going to be able to stop them. This game is supposed to be a cinematic-like movie experience almost for gamers, so I think that seems pretty cool because it is a brand brand new story within this universe. On top of this, it's created by Machine Games, who made the Wolfenstein series, so I'm assuming, hopefully because this is a good developer in the past, is going to put out a good game again, and we've already heard some really good things about this game from people who've played it pre-release. Obviously, this one, because it's Machine Games, is also being published by Bethesda Softworks, so, you know, Todd Howard might have a little bit of hand in this one, but aside from all of that, if you are a fan of Indiana Jones especially, if you like action-adventure type of games, if you like first-person shooter, cinematic type experiences, any of these apply to you, I think you should probably pick this game up and try it out. I think it's going to be a good one. And now for another action-adventure game, a game that is actually a remaster that's releasing just a day later on December 10th, we have Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, both 1 and 2 remastered. And this one is going to be on both PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, both Xbox One and the newer Xboxes X and S, on PC, as well as the Switch. So pretty much every console possible and PC. Now, I have actually never played the Legacy of Kain series, so this one's very exciting for me because you can now play Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver 1 and 2 remastered with better graphics and keeping the same code, but feeling better to play, hopefully, with only the price tag of $30, and I believe it's actually 10% off on Steam right now, so only $27. Like I mentioned, this game's an action-adventure game that takes place after Kain, your former master, betrays and executes you, so you're going to go through, experience this great story and narrative, fighting vampires with your claws, telekinetic energy, your elemental wraithblade, and growing stronger to kill all of your enemies and devour their souls. This is also one of the games that I know that had an early mechanic between the, material and some sort of spectral realm that you can bounce between, and you can do this to traverse the different realms, solve different puzzles, reveal new paths, and defeat all of your foes that are in your way. So with all this being said, if you haven't played these games before, you're interested in going back and experiencing some of these action-adventure classics, specifically these cult hits like Legacy of Kain, I definitely think it's worth checking out, especially getting the first and second game for only $30 with the discount as of right now. Especially if you're a fan of action-adventure games like I am, I think it's worth going to check this out and playing it if you're interested. Now, moving on to the next title here that's releasing on December 13th on PC, you have Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, and this is an MMO that was early Kickstarter MMO that has been in development forever and has been pretty turbulent, changing a lot of the graphical style, having to reduce the scale of the overall game, and even had the initial head of the team making this game, called Visionary Realms, unfortunately pass away during the making of this game. And if you don't know, and if you're not in the MMO community, his name was Brad McQuaid, and he was a integral part on what MMOs are today, working on some of the earliest great MMOs like EverQuest. But through this, they persevere, they have a very die-hard community, and they are able to get this game out, and that's something super exciting to me. Now, what's important to note, this game is an early access release and a continuation of their testing phases, so it's not going to release with all of the content they are planning to release with on the full launch of the game. You were able to go up to level 40, you're going to have 12 of the 14 planned classes, 6 of the 9 planned races, and about 6 zones to explore. Now, I do want to say that this is not the standard MMO that you know of today. This is very traditional and built on the foundations of what made MMOs great 20 years ago, like games like EverQuest, for example. It's very slow paced. It's going to have tab target combat with a lot of, mana management, and you're going to die if you're not in a group. There's no group finder, so this is one of those MMOs that the old heads, I think, are going to find a little bit appealing. You're also going to have those 12 different classes, like I mentioned, and these are going to be the Cleric, the Ranger, the Dire Lord, Rogue, Enchanter, Shaman, Monk, Summoner, Necromancer, Warrior, Paladin, and Wizard. The only one that I think you probably wouldn't understand what it does is the Dire Lord. This is going to be wielding 2 different weapons and really have a lot of self-healing and going there and brutalizing their enemies. On top of this, the playable races are going to be the Human, the Dark Mer, which is kind of like a fish-like creature, the Ogre, Dwarf, Elf, and Halfling. The other ones are pretty self-explanatory, and like I mentioned, you are going to have those 6 different world zones, and it's going to be a pretty content-filled experience with not all of the content, obviously, at the early access launch. Questing in this game also seems pretty unique, and the exploration seems pretty unique. It's going to be, I think, called the Perception System, where you're going up and all of a sudden you're going to have this Dungeons and Dragons type of narration on your screen, and then through that you're going to need to explore and find the different secrets and find the different quests that way, and kind of go on different journeys through just exploring the world, which I think is really cool. Definitely, again, traditional MMO experience there. But again, if you're an old head like me, if you're somebody that played EverQuest, played World of Warcraft when it first launched, and played MMOs all the way back then, and that's really where you got your enjoyment out of MMOs when you started playing them, then this might be something you're interested in. Again, this was headed by Brad McQuaid, who is one of the forefathers of MMOs and what they are today. So I think that itself is pretty exciting, but again, early access, expect some bugs, expect not all of the content there. Now, with the last game, the 7th game on my list, we have Alien Rogue Incursion, and this is big for you VR fans, and this is going to be releasing on December 19th, and this is going to be on PlayStation 5 as well as PC. And although I'm someone who is a little bit too broke to afford a VR headset and someone who hasn't played a lot of VR games, I think this one is exciting, especially if you are a fan of the horror genre, specifically within the Alien franchise, because this is going to be an action-adventure type of game where you're hiding from aliens, killing aliens with a bunch of different guns, and you're going on a dangerous mission to an uncharted planet called Perdon. With your synth companion, also called Davis-01 for guidance, you are going to infiltrate an infested exoplanet solutions research facility and survive the ever-present threat of the most cunning xenomorphs ever encountered, with both stealth and serious firepower, like I mentioned, at your disposal. This game with a VR headset in general just seems very cool. It's going to be freaky as hell to see an alien running straight at your face or trying to hide from the different xenomorphs, and that's something that I think sounds pretty damn appealing, especially if you own a VR headset and you're a fan of the Alien franchise. This one's probably a must-buy if those things apply to you. But that wraps up my list for December and for 2024 in general. We're going into 2025 with a bunch of good games. February is packed with games, like I mentioned. Fall 2025 is packed with games, like I mentioned. And next year aims to be one of the best year for gaming, at least in my opinion, in a very long time. And I can't be more excited. But what are my top picks for this month? What are things that I'm most excited about? Number one, Path of Exile. I can't wait to play Path of Exile. I'm going to be playing that the second it releases in early access. I'm also pretty excited about Pantheon, because Pantheon's one of those games that I've been following for a very long time, and I'm a huge MMO fan. I played those traditional MMOs, like I said, and that's one that seems appealing to me, and I'm really excited just to finally get into that world that I've been looking at for so long through different trailers, through different previews, and things like that. The last one I'm really excited for, I think, is Marvel Rivals. I used to grind the hell out of Overwatch back in the day. I never played the beta for Marvel Rivals, but I am a huge fan of the Marvel franchise, so that's kind of the third one, at least in my opinion, that I'm extremely excited about as well to finally get my hands on. But I would also love to hear down below what games you're excited for, what games you're going to be picking up. Did this video introduce you to a game that you didn't know was releasing this month? Please let me know down below in the comments. Would love to talk to you guys. On top of this, if you enjoyed the video, like the video, and subscribe for more content like this. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!